This
next
conference will
week,
now be recorded.
just maybe quickly, because there could be some significant changes about retailers and others that will come down the pipe middle of next week, potentially. I don't know. I'm not predicting. I'm kind of saying, and that's a good reason to meet if people are interested in hearing some additional information. But if this is kind of our crew, and nothing against Arlo or Marie or anyone else that's on here, but we'd be happy to visit with you separately too, if that's more convenient, or if this is still a convenient way to get on here. Oh, here's Arts Center, so that's great. But we want to make sure that we're providing information that's useful. And I think just us all getting together and sharing a little bit, and then knowing as we hit other questions and can send people to additional resources, is helpful as well. So maybe some feedback in the chat box, or call Russ or I or Ed afterwards and let us know what you think. And we can come to more of a conclusion. But we'll get started. Thanks for being here. The first one out of the chute is Ed. I'll get out of the way. Ed, how about you? What do you got going on that you want to share today?
Just unmuting here, and man, oh man, I jotted down a lot of notes about what's going on in this chamber office. But let's start with this. Thanks to the partners and everyone who tuned in today. It looks like a smaller crowd. I think last week we had 22, and we're at about 14, 15 now. So Todd, I think you're right with dwindling attendance. Wanted to touch base on PPE discussion that we had with Michelle Zender Fisher yesterday at Nicollet County Government. They are a collection site, and they are encouraging sewers of masks to drop off those masks at the county government center. There's a big box there. The demand for masks greatly outweighs the supply of available masks. Businesses, the Yellow Candy Store of Jordan opened about an hour and 3 minutes ago. So now it's Walmart, Target, and the candy store. Chambers everywhere are looking forward to the day the boutiques and shops can reopen if they want to, with safe protocols. We hear it's super expensive to reopen, resupplying, paying employees, all those overhead things. The unemployment issue, we're hearing about that. Furloughed workers want to stay on unemployment because it means more money to them, but that means employers need employees, and it really affects their PPE forgivability. That's all at stake. And they need employees to deliver pizzas and do the work, create the widgets, whatever. So we're a Chamber of Commerce. We represent employers' interests. If somebody has a magic wand out there, please wave it to fix this situation. I don't know if there is a great fix. It's probably a combination of things. The Chamber office, we continue to lock the door here. We're just not open. We just don't need to be. That's for everybody's safety. We do a lot with chamber bucks. We kind of hang them in packages on the door for the buyers to pick up. We treat the chamber bucks that we receive kind of like mail. We let them sit for a day or 3 or 4 before we process them and record them. Otherwise, we're just able to do a lot on Zoom and through social media and phones and email and all those sorts of tools. So we're in a good position, unlike the shops and stores who need to make money and generate dollars. That's what's going on in the chamber world. I should mention virtual happy hour is today at 4:30 p.m. We had a small crowd last week. No shame in disclosing that. Thanks for Marie. Marie was there, and it was the Marie and Ed show. It was just 2 of us at virtual happy hour, so I was happy to see Marie. Happiness is what I crave on Fridays and every day. Spin Go. It's a spin, a St. Peter spin, SP spin on an old familiar game that you might see in church basements and other places. We've just pivoted to rename our game, which evolves every week, and this week will be Spin Go. We are thrilled very excited to announce that our celebrity caller tonight at 7 p.m. is Michael Callahan. So catch it all. Michael will be 7 miles away on his screen, and I'll be 7 miles this way on my screen through the miracle of a software called StreamYard and Facebook Live. That's what it always is. I would guess that we invest 8 hours, about $100 per week into Spingo. And it's worthwhile. We're supporting the business scene. We're supporting the restaurant shops and delis. So we'll keep doing it as long as people are playing, and we know a lot of people are playing. It was about 40 devices last week, and there might be a family of 3 or 4 at kitchen tables playing Spingo. So some things going on, staying positive, trying to support businesses as much as we can. I love May, and it's a beautiful day. Todd, what do you say?
I say it's Russ's turn to talk about some of the stuff with Nicollet County property taxes a little bit. So, and maybe Marie wants to chime in on that as well, but Russ, let me get you started first.
Yeah, I'll just briefly mention, again, last week we were joined by Jackie Kopet from the, I don't think they call it the auditor's office, but I'll call it the auditor's office. And she explained the property tax relief. You could waive any property tax penalties if you make that payment that's due here in May by July 15th. And you can contact Nicollet County 934-6800 and talk to Jackie or one of her colleagues up there in the office, and they can explain the eligibility, the process, the application. So just wanted to touch on that. And Arlo, you may be eligible. I'm not exactly sure on the eligibility for that, but it's those businesses that were more directly impacted by the governor's executive orders. So after that, we can turn things over to the John and Patrick show, our good friends from Greater Mankato Growth, who we have access to our RETA affiliation, the Regional Economic Development Alliance. That's St. Peter, Mankato, North Mankato, Lake Crystal, Eagle Lake, and the counties of Nicollet and Blue Earth. So, gentlemen.
Oh, hold on a second, Russ. Before we cut Patrick loose, Marie, did you have anything to add to the property tax issue? No, you're okay. All right, thank you. Patrick, John, it's your show.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here as always. Patrick Baker, Vice President with Greater Mankato Growth. I'm going to start federal, state, local for you. Got a couple updates in each of the buckets. So first, federal. You saw some of the news come out yesterday on the Economic Impact Disaster Loan Program through SBA. Not surprisingly, they are pretty dramatically oversubscribed on that program. Even though Congress did provide another $50 billion, I believe, in funding for that, they never really did open the application back up except for agricultural interests. So if you had applied, I think it was April 15th before they shut it down, your loan will be processed, but the caveat that they've now put on it is what used to be an up to $2 million loan is now going to be an up to $150,000 loan. So I know, for instance, our organization applied early April. I just got an email, I think it was this week or late last, saying that we received your application. So just the receive your application email was about 4 weeks after I applied. Still waiting for the supposed $10,000. We'll see if that ever shows up, and we'll see if we ever do actually get any loan funds through it. So a little disappointing there, as I know, there continues to be a fair amount of frustration around the Paycheck Protection Program, in particular, how the loan forgiveness piece is going to look like. The Treasury Department and SBA have still not yet put out detailed guidance as to how forgiveness will be calculated under the Paycheck Protection Program. So I think it just speaks to all the more importance of that St. Peter program and how quickly you've been able to stand that up, and the sort of huge gap plugging ability that that program is going to have, just given the significant issues that we're seeing in the federal side of the program. So happy to answer any questions there if you have them. On the state side, a little more optimism. Todd did sort of talk about retail and maybe opening next week. We do have a little bit of insider information on that. There's a couple things that we've been working on this week that you should probably be aware of. Our organization, Greater Mankato Growth, I'm guessing St. Peter Chamber signed on to it as well. About 75 chambers in the state did sign a letter to the governor that was sent to him on Thursday, essentially requesting and urging that he consider a more equitable and rapid approach to opening up all businesses. Obviously we're seeing the big boxes and the small retailers and sort of a pretty significant difference there. And there seems to be no reason that we can't come up with a way to get some equity in that system. So we sent that letter on Thursday along with the other chambers in the state. And then we subsequently followed that up with personal conversations with the Commissioner of Deed. That's the state's Department of Employment and Economic Development. And then we had a personal conversation with the governor yesterday. So a couple things that have come out of that. First, with the conversation with the Deed Commissioner, we are working with a very small group of sort of stakeholders around the state to craft a plan to reopen retail establishments for in-store customer traffic. Basically, the state has asked this group to come up with sort of a draft template for what a reopening plan would look like for retailers. We have drafted that. I just reviewed it again this morning, and so that will hopefully be on its way to the state here this afternoon or tomorrow morning for their consideration as they think about how they're going to take the step to open up those retail folks. Following that, we did have a conversation with the governor. The phrase from that call was essentially he expects it to be days, not weeks, before retail is reopened to customer traffic inside the store, and essentially guaranteed that that would happen before the expiration of his current stay-at-home order on the 18th. Unfortunately, continues to draw a sort of a line of distinction between retail and sort of service providers, salons, etc., and bars and restaurants. And so I don't know that I see sort of those service or sort of hospitality industries being opened within the next week, but certainly a bright sort of light at the end of the tunnel, I think, for retail here coming soon. So that is the state side. On the local side, this might be kind of more for Russ and Todd to check in on with their school district, but we are hearing from our school district here in Mankato. They run a summer child care program called ACES. The State Department of Education is telling our school district that they can't run that summer child care program. That is about 1,000 child care slots that would go offline in our community if we're not able to open that up. And that's, 1,000 parents plus that can't return to work because they don't have care for their children. So that is a pretty big issue for us, and just seems to run counter to the governor's order that child care is an essential service and should remain open if at all possible. So we did question the governor on that yesterday. I'll be following up with his office again today, but just wanted to kind of flag that for you all. I don't know if St. Peter runs something similar through their school system, but maybe something to get some clarity on and sort of get a little bit of advocacy going in the direction of the governor's office to clarify that issue. So that is my update for the morning. Happy to answer any questions. Continue to watch our blog, greatermankatoblog.com. That's where we have the latest and greatest breaking news on a number of issues, and I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Patrick. I know John, any questions for Patrick before we give John a swing? Patrick, I appreciate that issue related to daycare in St. Peter. That'll be interesting. That will be very, very interesting to see what happens there. There has been program here, And there's a couple other programs that are affiliated with that provide other assistance. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I do have an appointment with the soup at noontime, so I'll be visiting with Jeff here at noontime, and I'll ask him about that. If I have any additional news, I'll share with everyone. Any other questions for Patrick or comments for Patrick? All right, John, thanks for being here with us again, John.
You bet, my pleasure. Wanted to just kind of pick up where Patrick left off and referencing the Greater Mankato blog as a resource and touch on the need to have preparedness plans for businesses as we get ready to start ramping up again. One item that, an unintended benefit of drafting a preparedness plan, going through the exercise of thinking about how your business will operate a little bit differently is going to be very beneficial for consumer and customer confidence. So as part of drafting a preparedness plan, it needs to be shared. It's not required to be reviewed by the state or anything like that, but aspect of the plan is you share it with your employees, and those employees are also consumers. And so walking through a preparedness plan and laying out how you're going to be taking care of hygiene and what kind of signage and what type of social distancing you're going to do is really important. With employees being aware of what those circumstances, they can then be, an extended network to share with their friends saying, my employer's got this figured out. We're taking ABC steps, and it starts to build a little bit more confidence as the economy ramps back up. So on the Greater Mankato blog.com, we have templates that highlight different preparedness plans by industry. We have content related to the retail industry, the restaurant industry. You can even go out and take a look at what Target has put out there recently, laying out different steps that they've taken, and they've drafted kind of a toolkit for folks to review to help them get ready to go for, again, when things ramp back up. Also wanted to highlight, on the blog post, we do have information about personal protective equipment. So if part of your preparedness plan involves, procuring some masks for maybe the over-the-counter interactions or signage to help, it's going to be guiding customers through a store. It helps build that confidence. It demonstrates that you guys, business owners are thinking about this. And we have some examples and some helpful hints on how to approach getting your personal protective equipment or PPE ordered. We have links to different suppliers. We're going to be updating those links as more information comes in. I got one even late last night, and we've been reaching out to promotional suppliers, folks that order different things like signage and that kind of stuff. They're in the procurement business, so those can be resources for you to reach out, and we're happy to share those resources with anybody that is needing to order or is actually a resource to buy different signage, or even the sneeze guards in between one side of the counter and the other. So I just wanted to emphasize the need for promoting those preparedness plans, because it helps to start. It wasn't easy going into the mode that we are now, and it's going to be even tougher getting out of it and building that confidence. So doing that work now can go a long ways towards building that momentum.
John, thank you very much. When you were talking about that, and maybe this is a question for the group, I'm kind of not so concerned about the government regulation of it, but do you think consumers are likely to make choices as to where they buy things? Will it be a new thing that gets graded on Yelp, as an example? If a business is either showing that they're being careful about this, or conversely showing that they don't care, will that get out? And do you think will consumers make choices based on that? I'm looking at Arlo here and thinking that, it gets out pretty quick when a place is clean or not clean in his business. It gets out pretty fast. Will that transfer to other businesses, downtown shops and other things? Do you think? Maybe Michael, that's a great one for you. I'm just curious, because I don't think a lot of people want to make time to do those plans. It's less about the plan and more about the journey. If it's not going to impact my bottom line, do you think it impacts bottom line or will consumer preference?
I say definitely it's going to impact the bottom line. Can those funds be used? Yeah, they can be used, I think, in that type of case. Patrick, I think as far as reopening, those can be used as far as assisting a business. Do you got anything to add to that, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had on our call with the governor, Barry Wilford, he's the chamber president in Grand Forks. So it has East Grand Forks and then Grand Forks on the North Dakota side. Grand Forks on the North Dakota side has, recently opened up to some extent its retail and bars and restaurants, et cetera. And, so he sort of confirmed that there was not a rush into businesses, right? People are being patient, biding their time. And what he's also seen sort of is, he termed it an arms race amongst businesses sort of on the Grand Forks side to have the most protection sort of in place for their customers. You're right, Todd. I think it's the level of protection is going to breed confidence. This is entirely a confidence game at this point. And, if sort of a business is sloppy in how they approach their plan going forward, not only is it going to hurt their own business, I suspect, it's probably going to have a detrimental impact on sort of on the business community as a whole from an advocacy standpoint, because what we're trying to convince, the governor and state leaders, et cetera, is that our businesses are ready. They know what they need to do to protect their customers. And if we sort of go ahead with some of these reopening plans and that turns out to not be the case, we're going to have egg on our face in a pretty bad way. And if sort of we're right about sort of this COVID flaring back up in the fall or winter or whatever, it's not going to bode well for us when we need to look at managing it again.
It kind of seems to me that when I'm looking in the future at businesses, whether I'm on their Facebook page or I go to their website, or maybe I'm kind of pulling up outside the door, I'm looking for something that tells me here are the 3 or 5 things that they're doing to help protect themselves and me as I'm in there, it seems like.
Yeah, I imagine that it's, the competition now isn't, one store versus another. It's getting people out of their house. And that's going to be the biggest challenge going ahead. And if you're able to get the customers in the door, a first impression under these circumstances is going to be tremendously important. You got to be able to reassure, not just by saying, no, it's okay, I got it covered, but it's the actions that you've taken during this time as we're looking to ramp up that's going to give people the most confidence.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, when we talk about that, I mean, John's absolutely right about getting people out of their houses. Greater Mankato Growth, sort of in partnership with our Visit Mankato group, we will be launching a pretty significant sort of back to business campaign for our marketplace here in the next week or two, focused on that exact question of getting people out, getting them convinced that it's safe to return to some of these stores and some of these businesses, et cetera. And we're actually looking at partnering with the city of Mankato on that a little bit. And, I know there's been discussions about sort of once we get into this, how could we expand this to kind of more regional partners around our area, St. Peter, New Ulm, et cetera, because it's again, we're not trying to target people living in Montana or whatever to come visit, Mankato or our region right now. It's how do we get people that are, 30, 40 miles away to return back to sort of that normal routine of utilizing our region as that hub for, shopping and entertainment, et cetera. And obviously that's going to take some time to build that back up, but we're 100% convinced this is a confidence game. And we're putting the pieces in place that we need to as a region to be able to demonstrate to our customers, both locally and sort of within our, drivable range of our region, that that we're doing the things appropriate to make it a safe place to visit.
Sure. Anybody else have any other questions for Patrick or John or on this topic before we turn it over to Michael? All right, Patrick, John, thank you very much, guys. Michael, you're up.
Sure. I'm just going to kind of probably add some observations from my perspective. I did have an opportunity to visit, due to family matters, visit 2 states that were officially open. And the things that we ran into was restaurants were, even though they received guidelines to be COVID-19 compliant, they were not opening. They were basically doing deliveries. Many of them did not have a plan in place. They did not have any supplies. Some of the restaurants had limited menu items due to shortages in the supply line. So those are the things that we might see as well. One of the things that I would urge small businesses to do, especially right now, is ramp up, making sure that they are compliant, and also in putting a marketing component. In those 2 states that I visited, which are neighboring states, it was pretty bleak from the standpoint that people were out and about, but there was no consumer confidence even going to the larger chains that were open and in compliance. There were only like 2 or 3 cars, and the majority of their business was being deliveries or pickup. So I would encourage restaurants and bars to put, to be compliant, but also to have some type of marketing plan in place. And we do have SBDC marketing assistance available. So, and that's available to businesses for free of charge. The other thing that we're kind of gearing up towards is businesses. This might be the time which, unfortunately, businesses might be considering to exit. I would also suggest that if a business is considering to exit, that they contact us. We have a great partnership with Legal Corps of Minnesota. They can take some time and maybe talk with an attorney initially. We do have an Ask the Attorney session coming up for a webinar this coming Monday at 3 p.m. So people can go to our website at myminnesotabusiness.com to register for that. From that direction, what we're being told, the SBDC is a partner agency of the SBA. And what we're told at the national level is that they really would like to see us gear up our consulting team to be more into IT and cybersecurity, because the federal government wants to make sure that we are working with small businesses to make sure that they're better resilient, to move more from a bricks to a clicks type of model, so that if we have disruptions like this in the future, it won't disrupt the economy as much. So we're going to be doing that and kind of reconfiguring our consulting team from that perspective. But I would highly encourage anyone that's looking at reopening soon to plan now, to get a marketing plan in place. I agree with PB&J that consumer confidence is going to be huge. Cleanliness is going to be huge. And I think there's going to be kind of what the states have had to face with this pandemic. I think there's going to be some competition in making sure that they get supplies, making sure that they get the right equipment in place to help these businesses kind of foster that consumer confidence locally within the market. So that's basically what I have at my place. Like I said, we're kind of moving from a financial triage, even though we're still on that. We also are looking at marketing, unfortunately looking at some business exiting with some clients as well. And also long-term, seeing what we can do to help businesses to be more resilient from having a much more place online.
Michael, thank you. Any questions for Michael? Mike, I will say before other questions might come up, we have, bumped into a few people here that we've sent your direction. So we're hoping that they're contacting you, and really from that planning standpoint, we really appreciate the stuff that you're doing. Russ, I know your mic came on. You got a question, or I know you want to talk about micro loan program too.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone's got questions for Michael first. Well, don't hear anything, so I'll just go ahead and talk about our COVID-19 micro loan program. But first of all, I want to explain but general rule of thumb, you can't give yourself your own nickname. But Patrick Baker and John Considine have been referring to themselves as the PB and J. So that's what Michael was referring to.
You sent one email.
Yeah.
I'll make an
Middle name's
exception.
Jay. I've been known as PB&J for basically my whole life.
So on our COVID-19 microloan program, originally the city council and EDA set that up to address the revenue shortages of those that were directly impacted by the governor's order. So it was bars and restaurants, retail sales, public accommodations and lodging, public assembly. I'm not going to remember them all off the top of my head, but subsequent to the initial guidelines, there was a request to expand the eligibility to include birthing centers and medical offices. So that's your allied medical professionals, your dentists, chiropractors, podiatrists, psychiatrists, etc. And the city council then did make that exception, and I'll be distributing 3 of those loans later this afternoon. And now we've had a request from one of the auto repair establishments in his letter requesting that they be made eligible. He said that he is an essential business, but he's essentially going broke. As people are driving less, there's less wear and tear on automobiles requiring his repair services. I know in my own case that next oil change has probably been pushed out at least a month and a half. So he has had a significant reduction. And so to that effect, the EDA had a special meeting on Wednesday afternoon, and they have recommended that it be expanded further to include those auto repair shops. And the city council then will take that up Monday night at their regular city council meeting and consider that expansion. And I am not a wagering guy, but I would think that there's probably a pretty good chance that it'll be expanded. The city council has expressed an interest or a willingness to reconsider that from time to time as we learn a little bit more about what the impact is of this virus on our business community. So these are $10,000 maximum loans. Most of them have been for the maximum. By the end of the afternoon, we'll have just over $400,000 in play and on the street helping businesses, and it's an honor. And I can say I truly believe this is making a difference with these businesses, and they're very, very appreciative for what we're doing. There's a 2-page application you can find on the city's website, stpetermn.gov. Go to doing business and then COVID-19 business resources. And on that link, you can find a copy of the 2-page application. You can send that in along with copies of your lease or mortgage and your monthly billing, and we can get that loan processed in a matter of days. So we'll be doing distributions each Friday. So if you apply now, it's very likely that I can get you approved, get everything documented, get some loan paper signed, and get you a check next Friday morning or Friday afternoon when they're cut. Is there any questions from anyone about the microloan program? The activity has slowed down. Like I said, the 3 I'm doing today are the businesses that were most recently added to the eligibility list. So be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, seeing no questions, I'm up list just to talk about MRVT Transit. As you know, in Le Sueur and St. Peter, transit dial-a-ride is now free. So we've seen a little bit of an uptick, which is great. We'll see once retail and other things start to open how that will impact, especially salons and those type of personal service issues, which a lot of our riders are going to and from and using. So just wanted to throw that out there. That's getting funded through the CARES Act, Federal CARES Act. So that's what's funding that and making that go. I think that's it, unless anybody has questions about that or general questions, business community program questions. I'd open the floor for that. Ed, I saw your mic come on. Ed Johnson. Ed.
Got a question for Patrick or John. The biggest question I was asked yesterday in emails and text messages is what justifies opening a candy store?
They have indicated that they have close ties to agriculture and they sell a fair amount of agricultural product, which is true. I've gotten plenty of meat sticks, bacon, and apples there in my time.
Okay, just.
I don't have a public answer.
A lot of people asked me about that yesterday. So.
I think it's a fair question, Ed. I've wondered that myself. I appreciate Patrick's diplomatic answer. I think that's fantastic.
People can go buy candy, but they can't come and sit in my bar and have a beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great question.
Maybe
All
you
right.
could-
Any other questions for the good of the order or commentary? Okay, so I think we're going to meet next week. I think that's the plan. Meet next week. I think with some changes that Patrick and John alluded to at the state level, maybe that will be a good time for us to talk about that and kind of what some of the rules or the guidelines are necessarily going to be for opening of some of those sectors. Does that make sense, guys? You feel okay about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Michael. Anybody else have any other questions or comments before we kind of hang up on everyone but Arlo? Arlo wanted to talk with Russ and I after this one, so we'll just keep this going. All right, Russ, last chance for you. Anything else?
No, just everybody
Okay.
stay safe, take care of yourself and your family, and be very, very well.
Hey, Ed, we want to give you a call after this one too. So we'll visit with Arlo and then give you a call if you're around. All right, everyone. Thanks. Stay positive, test negative. Great to see you today. Bye-bye.